Joshua Tiemens, we can't have a show without a Tiemens, asks, what happens if we're alone in the universe? He says, we have thought we were alone in the ancient past, that was mostly before we conceded there were no worlds beyond our own. How might we react with that knowledge? Might we value our species more seriously? I don't know who said it. It might have been Sagan. But either we are alone in the universe or there are many other intelligent life forms in the universe, and either answer is mind-boggling. I'll just give you my quick little take on this. Obviously, prior to modern science, there was no real belief in other planets because we didn't even know there were other planets. We didn't even know what the planets were until we started getting to Galileo and Kepler and Newton. Once we had a telescope, we could see it was a little sphere. Oh, it's not just a little moving spark. It's not a god. It's not a campfire. It's not a piece of crystal. It's a little orb, and chances are it's like our orb. That's only 300-400 years old, this idea. So as we began to think about the fact that there were other planets, the second we realized that there were planets, this happened almost immediately, by the way. The minute that we realized that Mars was a world, an actual world like ours, a little smaller and drier and colder, but a world, instantly people started populating Mars with fictional people. And they thought, well, the gravity's lower, so they'll be taller, and they'll have bigger lungs because the air is thinner, and making logical assumptions about what life on those planets would be. So we've always had a strong desire to populate the universe once we realized that there could be something beyond the Earth. They were talking about lunar people, and there was a sci-fi movie, or not movie, who am I kidding, a sci-fi story, I think. It was certainly the 1800s, might have been late 1800s, maybe even mid-1800s. It was a sci-fi story called The Brick Moon. It might have been H.G. Wells, I'm not sure, but somebody basically makes an orbiting satellite made of brick, and it's got air on the inside. It's just a brick sphere, and it orbits the Earth. All right, awesome. So I grew up in the 60s and 70s, space age and Star Trek, and Mr. Spock is a combination of a Vulcan and a human, and as Sagan pointed out, it's much more likely he'd survive if he was a combination of a human and a dandelion, because at least most of the DNA would be the same. His father's got copper-based blood, and his mom's got iron-based blood, and so he's got, please. But, it opens up the mind. We got blue people out there. We got lizard people. We got dog people. We got lion people. We got all these humanoids. We got stunt actors in suits. And then as we got into the 70s and the 80s, got a little more sophisticated and started thinking about actual, genuine other forms of life. And then the Drake equation comes out, which for those of you who may not know, was really, I remember at the time, I was so impressed by the Drake equation. And now I think it's about the worst thing that ever happened. But an astronomer named Drake basically said, he wanted to estimate the number of intelligent societies, intelligent worlds out there. And so he took the number of suns, and then the number of Earth-like suns, and then the number of Earth-like suns that might have a planet within the habitable zone, and then the number of those that might have a oxygen atmosphere, and then the number of those that developed life. Then a smaller, everyone got smaller and smaller, smaller. Number of stars, right, and then number of stars with planets got smaller. Number of Earth-like planets got smaller and smaller. Number of planets with life got smaller. Number of planets with intelligent life got even smaller. Number of planets with intelligent life that developed technologies even smaller. And then a number of intelligent life with technology that survived their nuclear age got even smaller. And so basically, when this was coming out, I thought, great, we finally got some information. And it turns out the number was anywhere in our galaxy, was anywhere between 100,000 and 25 million, something like that, right? And then somebody pointed out to me just a couple years ago, they said, this Drake equation, you could maybe say was the beginning of the end of science, because none of the variables were known. You had this kind of elegant equation, but we didn't know any of the variables. We had a decent idea of the first variable, the number of stars in the solar system, in the galaxy. We knew that reasonably well. But the number of planets around stars, we hadn't a clue. Not a clue. Number of them in the habitable zone? Nope. Number of them that developed life? Who knows? Intelligent life? Nobody knows. They were just assigning numbers that felt about right. And what I began to realize, as somebody pointed this out to me, was this was not only not science, this was anti-science. You were basically trying to derive a number or take a shot in the dark, and instead of saying, I'm going to take a wild guess, it's 10,000 intelligent societies in our galaxy. What do you base that on, Bill? Absolutely nothing. It just seems like a nice number to me. That would be honest. But to come up with this sort of intellectual framework to sort of put the power of science and equations and algebra and subs, headings and stuff, when in fact you're just simply inventing stuff. It's anti-science. So my opinion has changed. When I was a boy working in the Miami Planetarium in '73, I would have told you there were 100,000 intelligent societies in our galaxy alone. That would have been my best guess. And we were lamenting the fact that we weren't listening to them and we weren't spending money on it, because we know that if they've got a technological society, they're going to be generating electromagnetic emissions, probably radio waves. Maybe they'll be using radio waves to communicate. Everybody thinks that, I Love Lucy is traveling out there at the speed of light, and it is. But the television signal is not what's lighting up the Earth. It's the radars. That's what's lighting up the Earth. If other civilizations are looking at us, what they're going to see is a giant burst of radio energy, but it won't be "Here's Lucy." It'll be Arctic search radars, which are producing radio signals millions of times more powerful. That's what they're going to see. But we would be able to see something like that from them too. So for the longest time, we thought it's just a question of telescopes. It's just a question of listening in on the frequency, and we find one star and we point our radio telescope to it. Then once we've isolated a star, we have to go through every single one of the frequencies of the dial. We have to look at them. If you're old enough to have ever tuned a radio, you know that it's the signal's only in a very narrow part of the total spectrum, and we had to sit there and dial and tune everything. Then all of a sudden along comes computers, and all of a sudden, instead of us taking a scalpel or looking at it through a cocktail straw, we just had computer technology that could just analyze hundreds of thousands of frequencies at a time in large swatches of space. And you probably remember back in the early days of the internet, SETI at home, which was a brilliant idea. And basically they said, we don't have the computer power. We are able to absorb all this information. We're able to record it, but we can't process it. We don't have the computers. We don't have the money. And SETI at home was brilliant because it was a screensaver you could download, and the screensaver used the very primitive dial-up internet of the day. And it went to the SETI servers, and it took a parcel of that raw data and sent that parcel out to, I thought everybody got their own parcel, but I later learned no. SETI at home server would send a packet of data out to 10,000 home computers, let's say. And each one of the home computers worked as a screensaver, so if you were doing your laundry and your screensaver kicked in, or if you left it on overnight, I always left mine on overnight because I wanted to be a guy to detect the signal. So it's using just PC power, but it's using millions and millions of PCs. And each one of the PCs is crunching this data, and then it sends the results back. And then what I learned later was, I thought, man, I'm looking at the little, because they give you a cool little display, and I'm looking for spikes, man. I'm going to be the guy who finds it, But what it did is it would send it back to the home computer, and if all 10,000 information packets came back and showed an anomaly in the same place, like we just sent this out and 10,000 computers analyzed the same data, and all 10,000 of them said, at this time, on this frequency, at this location, there's something interesting. Then they would take real telescopes and real astronomers and point it at that. That's basically what SETI at home did. But SETI at home's been working for 20 years now, and we haven't found anything. And we have listened to a sizable part of the sky now, a significant part of the sky, and we haven't found anything. And that is telling me something. We don't know how likely life is. I suspect life is everywhere. I believe in this panspermia idea. I think life is everywhere. Intelligent life is much more rare, and technological life is very much more rare. So I'm getting to your answer here, believe it or not. Here's what I have come to believe about this. First of all, if you're talking about an intelligent technological society in this galaxy, somebody has to be first, right? Somebody has to be first. It's possible that we're first, or it's possible that we are the first within a large volume of this galaxy, that we are the first in a large volume of the galaxy. Somebody has to be first. But I have to tell you what really changed my opinion about the likelihood of intelligent technological life in the universe. I think life is everywhere. I think intelligent life is relatively common when you're talking about the intelligence of cats or dolphins or chimps. But I think technological life is much, much rarer, and I will tell you why. One of the most influential things I've ever watched in my life was a documentary on Discovery Channel back when Discovery Channel was about science and not about, ice road truckers. And I think it was called If the Earth Had No Moon, but that was the premise of it. And only then, at the end of that, did I realize how much of a fluke Earth is. And Earth is not a fluke because of where it is relative to the sun. Any planet of a decent size in that position would be Earth-like and would develop an atmosphere and all that other stuff. But what they found was the moon does a couple of things that are absolutely invisible and absolutely critical. The first thing that the moon does is the moon stabilizes the Earth's rotation and stops the Earth from flipping over. Other planets essentially just precess and they will in fact just tip over. Now, why is that bad? Well, it's bad because if you have a planet like Uranus, where the North Pole's pointed at the sun for half the year, and then 20 years go by, and then the South Pole, you've got the sunlit side bakes and the dark side freezes. So it stabilizes the Earth's seasons at the 23 degrees that we've got right now. But the thing that makes the Earth especially rare is because the Earth is a double planet. We don't have a moon. The Earth is a double planet. When you look at any other planet in the solar system, Mars has 2 moons, but those moons are infinitesimally small. Phobos, and just a couple miles across, they're asteroids, they're specks. Jupiter's got some moons that are the size of nearly the Earth, but Jupiter is so much bigger that the moons are very small, planets very big. Earth is a double planet. Pluto was a double planet until it was demoted from planet. But Earth is the only planet in the solar system where the satellite is very nearly the same size as the primary. And what they did in this documentary was so convincing to me was they looked at what the moon does in terms of preserving the Earth from asteroid impacts. And if you've ever looked at the moon through a telescope, you'll see the moon is covered with craters. There's not a part of the moon that's not cratered, with the exception of these dark areas called maria. And those maria are lava flows, and the only reason those lava flows are there are because big honking asteroids have hit the moon and taken out a third of the moon or a sixth of the moon. Sea of Tranquility, Oceanus Procellarum, all of these seas are in fact enormous craters that were so big that they went right to the core of the moon, and the lava came up and filled them up. So there's not a lot of surfacing because the surface is a little younger, not a lot of cratering rather. But the moon has taken a lot of hits, and guess what? Those hits were coming for us. The moon has deflected so many asteroid impacts that were destined to hit the Earth, and any one of the craters that you can see on the moon with binoculars is an extinction level event if it hits the Earth. So where I've come as far as the life in the universe thing goes is I think life is everywhere, and even a catastrophic asteroid impact didn't kill life on Earth. It killed all the big life. And microbes survived in some cases, or the little mammals underground. But you got to think about it this way: without the moon, the complexity clock would be constantly reset. It'd just be reset. It'd be like a stopwatch. Go. Here's an impact. Okay. Tick, 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 tick. Yes, life is evolving. It's evolving. It's evolving. It's becoming a little more sophisticated, more sophisticated, more sophisticated, more sophisticated, more sophisticated. This is on Earth now. Oh, look. Okay. And 65 million years later, boom. Here's another one. Reset the clock. But without the moon, it's like click, okay, and Earth is starting, and boom, here's another one. Oh, now we've got monkeys, boom, here's another one. These impacts are taking the ecosystem down so much more frequently that you don't get to the point where you evolve intelligence, and you have to have intelligence for a while before you get technology. And I think that we're here because of the moon. I'm quite convinced of it. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, you have to add something to Drake's equation, and that is how many suns have planets, how many planets are in the correct distance from the sun, and then before you get to the rest of it, you've got to ask yourself, and how many of them have large satellites in the orbital plane, so that their gravity basically sweeps the entire orbital space around the Earth, and the moon is the Earth's goalkeeper. Doesn't mean that things don't get through. I mean, it's not like the moon is Brazil or anything, but the moon gets most of it, and some of them get through, but the moon gets most of it. And there was a little flash game that demonstrated this little flash thing. And basically what it was a little dot, a little circle in the middle, and the circle was the Earth, and the Earth had a 1g gravity field. And you could just set a vector and launch an asteroid and put it around the Earth, or and so you just start chucking these asteroids in the general vicinity of the Earth. And with the Earth alone, the Earth's gravity is bending these things into it, or bending it into an elliptical orbit where 2 or 3 orbits later it's on the Earth. And I mean, it was really shocking. It was really striking. So you're watching all these things hitting the Earth, and then they do one where the moon is in orbit around the Earth, and you start sending these things in there like you did before, and the damn moon either accelerates them out because the moon's orbital velocity just accelerates them out and they don't ever come back again, or it'll deflect them in, or it'll take the impact itself. Some still get through to the Earth, but it's a really remarkable demonstration of how much that moon does for us. So, look, the moon is a fluke of high order of improbability. Planets have satellites that collide. The rings of Saturn are the result of a moon that either disintegrated or didn't form. I think disintegrated is current theory. That kind of thing's not unusual, but the rings are temporary. The rings won't be there in 20, 30 million years. Jupiter has rings, Uranus has rings, Neptune has a thin ring system. Rings are not the moon. And the little moons of Jupiter don't do anything to protect Jupiter. And we saw that string of comets, I want to say it was Shoemaker-Levy, broke up into 9 pieces, and they all hit Jupiter, and they all hit Jupiter with the force of every atomic bomb ever built on the Earth, 9 times. If that had come our way, it would have hit us, but the moon might have saved us. The moon might have taken the hits. There's little pieces of glass on Earth called tektites, which are pieces of the moon that were ejected into space. Some giant object hit the moon, blasted this ejecta into space, and then little pieces of this glass rained down on the Earth. But that's a lovely meteor shower. That's like a once in a lifetime view of the night sky. That's not an extinction event. So the moon may have made us unique. Or look, it's not unique. When you talk about the number of stars in the universe, even in the galaxy, 100 billion, 200 billion stars in the galaxy, you're going to get several moons and several Earth-Moon combinations, but you're not going to get anything like the 100,000 I thought. 5, 10, 20, 50, who knows? Nobody knows. And when you take that out to every galaxy in the universe, 100 billion galaxies, there are, in fact, without question, millions of intelligent technological civilizations, but they could be very, very, very far away. And even if that's all true, somebody still has to be the first. Somebody has to be the first. Maybe it's us. I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. If you look at human beings as a creature, if you look at them biologically and not astronomically, you will be amazed. You will be amazed at what astonishing creatures humans are. We're astonishing biologically. Think about this. Humans eat everything. There's nothing on the Earth that humans don't eat. Humans eat virtually every kind of plant that's not toxic, and when they're hungry enough, they'll eat tree bark. Humans eat insects. Humans eat birds. Humans eat fish. Humans eat sea mammals. Humans eat bears. Humans eat things that fly, things that swim, things that slither. We eat snakes. We eat bugs. We eat insects. We eat grapes. We eat pine cones. We eat everything. That is an evolutionary advantage. Nobody ever discusses this, but there's not another animal in the world that eats everything. Really, it's kind of amazing, really, when you think about it. And secondly, we are infinitely programmable, and all you need to do is to look at what happened in the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, and watch people who have been led to their death, or their families are being led to their death, or people. This is more true in the Soviet Union than in Nazi Germany, believe it or not. But I've been reading an awful lot about the purges, and you would find people being sent to their death by Stalin and the communists. And as they're being executed, they're saying, "I love Comrade Stalin. I love communism. My death is nothing compared to the great glories of the revolution." That kind of intellectual pliability means that we are as programmable as we are, as infinitely programmable as we are infinitely consumers. So when you talk about technological advances, when you have a species like humans that are such good learners, and we're really pretty tough species too. I mean, you think about this too. You know, we eat everything. We can learn to live in virtually any environment. There are humans living in the North Pole, and there are humans living in the Sahara Desert. I dare you to name another species that does that. You know, there are bears that live in various latitudes. There are bears that are adapted to live in the polar regions, but there are no bears in the desert. Humans live anywhere, and they can adapt to anything, and they're willing to adapt to anything, and they eat anything, and you know, when people ask, it's like it's kind of a fun thing, really. It's like, what's the fastest animal on the earth? That's easy. It's mankind by orders of magnitude. The fastest bird is 200-300 miles an hour. Man has flown 17,000 miles an hour in orbit, 3,000 miles an hour in the atmosphere, and 25,000 miles an hour to the moon and back. What's the deepest creature? What creature survived at the deepest depths? Man. What creature lives in the coldest environments? Man. Which creature can survive in the hottest environments? It's man. Which creature's the strongest? We are. It's amazing. So, in order to come up with, rather than thinking about how many other technological societies are like ours, I think a much better question to ask is, how unusual and rare is this? What do you need? You need a sun. You need a planet in the right place. You need a moon, which was the result of another planet called Orpheus, about the size of Mars, hit the Earth. When you look up at the moon at night, by the way, you're looking at the core of the Earth. This planet called Orpheus, about the size of Mars, hit Earth 3.5-4 billion years ago, knocked the core of the Earth into orbit, and that core coalesced into the moon. So the moon is not a foreign body. There was some theory a while ago, before we went to the moon, that said maybe the moon was captured, it was a different body. Excuse me. But nope, that's the Earth core up there. And so when you get into those things, it's actually pretty rare. I think we're not alone, but a lot more alone than I originally thought. Man, excuse me. So no space program show could be complete without a quick talk about the Free Frontier, which I've talked about several times, and I don't have much to add here, other than to say, boy, there's something in the back of my throat just driving me crazy. I have a time schedule for the Free Frontier, and this cough is driving me nuts. Just so you all know, the Free Frontier, as we've talked about before, is for $9.95 a month. You get a space program. If you want it, you got to pay for it. It costs money to go into space, and I know you're already paying taxes, but the government isn't going to be doing this. I don't think NASA's ever going back to space. So if you want a space program, $9.95 a month on your credit card. If we have 1 million Americans, it's $120 million a year. If we have 10 million Americans, it's $1.2 billion a year, and you can't spend the money that fast in private space. So 10 million Americans signing up for this, and you got all the money you need to go wherever you want to go. And the idea behind the Free Frontier would be that if you're a member of the Free Frontier, you get to ride. It's a lottery, but a lot of people play their lottery. And what I mean by you get to ride is we are going to raffle off once a month or several times a month or whatever it takes, a ride in the most advanced vehicle that we have that can be done with relative safety. Not perfect safety, because we'll never get to perfect safety. The reason that Branson has taken 10 years to launch Virgin Galactic is he says no one can ever die in our vehicle. Well, that's not the way to do business, Richard. You will never be able to keep that promise, and you should basically be saying we do our best to make sure nobody dies in our vehicle. Anyway, so for $9.95 a month, we get this thing launched. We're going to buy a Viper jet, and it's going to say Free Frontier on it. And for your $9.95 a month, if you're one of the first members in there, several times a year, once a month, twice a month, 5 times a month, whatever it takes, you get to go with me or some actual pilot in a high-performance 2-seat jet and get a high-altitude ride and go fast. I have not talked to X-Corps about this officially, but needless to say, once X-Corps gets that vehicle going, we'll just buy some rides for them. So for $9.95 a month, you get to go into outer space. Outer space. Suborbital flight, and it's $95,000, but we'll pay the $95,000 because you're paying $9.95 a month. And it's not a space tourism plan. The idea is basically we would just have to assemble a pot of money. And in order to assemble a pot of money, we've got to give people their money's worth. We have to give them something that's worth $9.95 a month. And we're giving them 2 things, really. The first thing we're giving them is pride. Americans don't want to think that our best days are behind us. We don't want to think that the Chinese are going to go colonize the moon and Mars. We don't want to think that America's best days are behind us. So for $9.95 a month, you get to have a space program that's going to go places that the existing space program didn't go. We're going to go faster and further. So we're selling pride, but the other thing we're selling, and the thing we're really upfront selling, is progress. We've watched man go around the Earth now for 40 years in orbit, and we're tired of that. We're going to have a timeline and a plan, and the timeline would look something like a jet, a suborbital vehicle, a multi-person suborbital vehicle. We'll buy a spaceship too. Bert told me that when they sold them to made the deal with Virgin Galactic, he said, we'll sell you as many of these things as you want. They hold 7 people each. But we're going to make it clear that we're not going to sell them only to you. If somebody else wants to buy one, they can buy one too. Bert wanted several different companies in competition to drive the price down. So so maybe we buy a suborbital vehicle that looks like the Virgin Galactic vehicle, and it says Free Frontier on it, and we fly 2 missions a month, and 14 people a month, or 50 or whatever, go into space for $9.95 a month. It's not a $200,000 ticket. It's $9.95. Up you go. Once we get to the point where we've got an orbital vehicle, then you'll get to go for an orbital ride. Once we get to a place where we have an inflatable habitat to go to, then you get to spend 2 days in Earth orbit for $9.95 a month. The next step is to create a vehicle, build it in orbit, a vehicle that can go from the Earth to the Moon. You get to go around the Moon. You get to do an Apollo 8 mission for $9.95. Once we know it's relatively safe, you get to go. It's just a lottery. And then you get to go to the land on the moon. You want to land on the moon? It costs you $9.95, and we mean it too. And I'm going because I said I would. Brent just said, would Neil McDonough be our spokesperson? Neil McDonough's the guy in the Cadillac ad. It's funny you mentioned that, Brent, because I'm actually thinking about him for the leader, the program administrator for Aurora. And then the final goal, as far as I can see it, would be to have vehicles that had a nuclear rocket engine, which is technology we developed in the 70s, and have 2 vehicles that were twins of each other, and they would be built in orbit, and they would not be terribly sophisticated looking, but they would be able to go from Earth to Ceres, or from Earth to Mars, or from Earth to Venus, and they would serve as each other's lifeboats, maybe 3 or 4 of them. You just upgrade the design, and then you basically got a vehicle you can travel the solar system in, and if somebody wants to put a colony on Ceres, then they don't have to build the ship. The immigrants came to America because they didn't have to, each one of them, build their own Queen Mary. They could just buy a ticket on the Queen Mary, and then you got to use the Queen Mary again for other people. And so the end goal of this would be to have a series of vehicles that could travel the solar system and be sent on whatever missions people wanted to pay for them for. That would be where we would go. And this would all be possible for $9.95 a month from 10 million people, which I think would be something we could do very easily. So the reason I bring it up again, I know most of you know about it, is I want to give you the time scale. I've been talking for the last year now, almost a year, about short-term goals of getting this office so that I could do members-only content. Members-only content gives us the money to develop movies. So we're getting rapidly near the point where I can start delivering members-only content, which makes me feel comfortable with really going out and selling the memberships. If we have the memberships go up, we can use that development money to get the money for the movies. Now, we can't do the movies right off. We've got Big Bad Problem up first because Big Bad Problem was written to be interesting, fun, exciting, and cool, and take place basically in an RV and out in the desert someplace. So it's an inexpensive movie to do, and I'm going to shoot that sucker this winter and fall. That's going to be this fall, this winter. Next year's movie is going to be the Common Sense Resistance movie, about 40 years in the future after the economic collapse, and that'll give us an idea of why Common Sense Resistance is important. So next year, we launch the Common Sense Resistance, and we launch it with that second film. And then the year after that, we do Aurora, which is about a private space mission using technology from 1970s. It's set in 2025, 2030. And oilmen and individuals get together and build a vehicle, and they go to Jupiter in it using no magic, using a Nerva engine that was built in 1970. And that will happen not this Christmas, not the next Christmas, but the Christmas after that. When that movie gets released, as with the Common Sense Resistance the year before, which would be next year, you'll be able to come out of the movie and say, well, if you liked what happened in the movie, it's actually here in real life. You can join the Common Sense Resistance in real life, set up a network of people, and that can help with distribution, all that other stuff. So it's probably two to 3 years out. And we will have enough people to buy a jet, and we'll spend a lot of money on gaining memberships, and we will have a plan, and we will have progress. And every time we fly somebody in the jet, or every time we fly somebody in the suborbital vehicle, or every time we do anything like that, we will have video crews there, and that'll be daily content for the members. Here's our suborbital flight with 7 people on March 22nd of 2016. Here they are. Here's everybody excited. Here's somebody throws up. Here's somebody back on the ground. Did you have a good time? We had a great time. You happy with your membership? It's the best money I ever spent. Okay, tomorrow we've got an update from a vertical landing thing that Armadillo Aerospace is doing out in Texas. We gave them $30 million to develop a lander and so on and so forth, so we're going to look at the flight test of that. And people get to see actual progress in this. Little timeline moves, and we get closer to things, and things actually happen. So that's the plan on the Free Frontier. I've had so many people say, would you just shut up and take my money? I will. But launching this website was a very, very cathartic experience for me. Launching the business was a cathartic experience for me. I learned a lot of lessons, important lessons about disappointing people and about delivering under promising and over-delivering. So I'm not going to launch this thing until it's ready, and it's not going to be ready for a while, 2-3 years. But Big Bad Problems is the movie business, and it is a great, great, interesting, fun sci-fi movie. Common Sense Resistance is a better movie. It's more expensive, and it comes with a real Common Sense Resistance, and Aurora is more expensive yet. But I do believe that in order to sell these things socially, you have to give people you can't tell them. You have to show them. You have to show them. Here is what it will look like. Here's a movie about where we're trying to be, where we're trying to go. And if you come out of this movie on a Saturday afternoon and say, damn it, why can't we do that? The answer is we can do it. And we can do it with $9.95 a month on your credit card. And it'll be utterly transparent, and we'll put a facility in someplace. I'm hoping to put it in on Lake Coeur d'Alene, and put Starfleet Command on one side of the lake, and you put Stratosphere Studios on the other side of the lake, and you're making movies and you're developing technology, and the government can go pound sand. We don't need the government. We're just going to... the last thing I'll say about the Free Frontier is the biggest problem in terms of what we need to accomplish is not money, and it's certainly not technological skill or engineering skill. The biggest problem is the political opposition. It's the government denying us access to space. It's the government saying, well, you don't have clearance for this, or this is a dangerous facility, or you can't do that, or whatever. And certainly when you get into nuclear rockets, or you can't launch these things, it's not safe. And it's like the political fight I have a fair amount of confidence in, because I think that the kind of laws that would actually slow us down would be so arcane. It's not like Obamacare. If you're trying to fight Obamacare, you're trying to fight a tremendously great evil. And you have a lot of people who don't want Obamacare, but you also have tons and tons and tons and tons of people and money and political power that do want Obamacare. If, on the other hand, all of our political energies are focused on repealing, HR 6219, which is the Federal Aviation High Altitude Restriction Law of 2012, if that's the law that we have to get repealed, and we mobilize senators and we mobilize congressmen and movie stars and all this other stuff, then we will win those battles. We're not talking about, yeah, you know what, you socialists want to go do what you want to, fabulous. We're not talking about not paying our taxes. We're not talking about starting our own country. We're just talking about just minding our own business here with the money we have after taxes, and we're just building stuff in our garage. So this one little law that you've got that's in our way here, I'm going to call down half of the country to get you to refine the HB 2463 of federal aviation regulations. That we can do. And frankly, if we run into things like bigger things, like they're not going to let us launch a nuclear rocket, then we'll launch the nuclear rocket from China or Russia or Malaysia or Ecuador, and we'll just go down there and pay them, and then we'll tell the American people, you might want to ask your government why Americans cannot launch from America an American space program. You might want to ask them that. Anyway, that's that. So another show bites at us here. I'll splice them together, get them up on YouTube. 2.5 hours of space awesomeness, and we'll do space warfare next week because that's really, really fun. And then we'll be done with space for a while. Then I want to talk about socialism. I've been reading an awful lot about the gulags and National Socialism, and we can have a couple shows about that. In any event, this is the new office. Those of you who have been paying for the new office, our gratitude is unending. Those of you who've been members and had to leave, I know times are hard out there. I don't want anybody feeling bad about that. And if you're not a member and you can't afford to be one, I get it. Furthermore, if you're not a member because you don't think you see enough members' benefits, I understand that too. I'm a businessman and I'm a realist. I'm also a capitalist. So hopefully in the near future we'll start providing stuff that will make it worth your $9.95, and we can move from the short-term plans, which was this office, into the mid-term plans, which are the movies, and then the long-term plans, which are the Free Frontier and an actual Common Sense Resistance. So I got it sorted out, and it's in a line, and I know what I need to do. And we'll keep you posted, because you're the best people on earth. You're the Strata Loungers, and I'm sorry I had to miss you for a couple weeks there, but there's a lot to do. And there's a lot to do going forward. So we'll see you next week. This is the end of Stratosphere Lounge, episode 75, the Space Program, episode part 2. And as always, thanks for your support and your friendship. I couldn't do it without you, and we'll see you next week.